G'day guys. Got good old no ears back together, but I've actually built up some new boards for the old no ears GPX-4500, and the reason I had to do that is because I had a request from a customer to build up a GPX upgrade in a particular way that is probably will give you an idea. I had a look at the transistor count in the chipset that I've used, and if I work it out correctly, we're up to somewhere, what would it be, 360 million transistor junctions in the chipset that has been added to this detector. Sounds like a lot, but it's the way these devices are manufactured. There's lots of multiple semiconductor cells that are paralleled, and they're very, very small, and there's just hundreds of thousands of them to get these devices to be very, very low noise and high speed. What it basically is, it's called, they call it super beta or super beta, depending where in the world you're from, and very, very sensitive, a huge amount of gain, very, very high speed, and we've utilized that technology into these detectors to get that added performance. Now this detector here is pretty close to maximum gain at the moment, and you can probably hear it's making a little bit of noise. It's just the truth of living in suburbia. So I'm going to give a little bit of a demo on this detector. I've got those 1, 2, and 3 test targets, where number 1 is a 1 millimeter length of 0.2 millimeter copper wire. Number 2 is the same 0.2 millimeter diameter, but at 2 millimeters, and 3 is 0.2 millimeter at 3 inches. 3 millimeters. I keep going from metric to imperial. I actually got brought up in the era when we started off using feet and inches, and then in about grade 3 at school we went metric. So I had a little bit of a grounding in it, and then it changed. So you'll hear me interchange the two terms. I'll use metric terminology, then I'll jump back into imperial terminology. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'd rather work in millimeters and say x thou of an inch or something. It's much easier to visualize. Well, maybe easy to visualize for most people in the world, except Americans, who are all stuck in the old ways of imperial measurement. So yeah, that's our test targets. I'm not going to work them out into thou of an inch, but yeah, pretty small anyway. If I put my hand there, you can see in the glue drops at the top there. I think you can see it. That number 1 is very, very tiny. Anyway, what I've got with this GPX 4500, I've got it in normal mode, and I've got a little bit of interference coming through. There's nothing much I can do about that. It's just it's probably picking up some of the noise from the iPhone. I've got lights on and power supplies and the router in here for the internet. I've turned off the bench just to get rid of some of the noise. But yeah, it's just modern society creates noise for these detectors. Get out in the bush, the noise goes away in most instances, unless you're near power lines. But give an idea on this one. I've got this set up in normal mode. I'm not using enhance. It's factory default set, and it's got all the new boards and component changes done in this detector. There is countless hundreds of man hours went into making this, and yeah, I was really surprised that a fellow wants basically the carbon copy of this detector electronically done on his GPX, and that's it over there. You can see under the just in front of the oscilloscope there, waiting to be done. I've had a lot of requests to do different variations of what we do to the detectors. So we got a lot of work on doing detectors at the moment, but I'll just crank this up anyway. I only do this as it's like a scientific thing. You know, what you can do to these old detectors, and it's like doing up a car. It's like pulling out the 4-cylinder engine and shoving a V8 in there. Okay, anyway, it's not as really rough as doing that, but you get the gist. I've got the camera up near the coil. The noise has actually increased a little bit. I've got the amplifier turned all the way up. Give you an idea of just the actual background noise. I've got this detector cranked up pretty high. It's in normal mode, right? So here we go. We'll try it anyway with this tiny little speck of 0.2 millimeter by 1 millimeter wire. You normally wouldn't be able to detect something that small. I don't even think, you know, you probably get it with a VLF, but pulse induction detectors normally would be struggling unless you use a very, very small coil. This is the 11-inch double D coil, but now, I've got to remember, I'm in normal mode. I'm not using enhance. So that's the 1 millimeter piece of fine wire. This one here is a 2 millimeter long piece. You can probably tell that the actual noise floor of the detector is extremely low. Even though we've got a few warbles coming in, that's quite impressive on such a tiny, tiny, small target. But when we go to something which is the 3 millimeter long 0.2 millimeter diameter wire, you know, it starts becoming a very, very loud signal on such a tiny, tiny thing. You know, that is very, very small. You know, stick my hands here so you can have a look if it focuses. So it gives you an idea how sensitive that these detectors can be made. It's like the previous uh, GP3000 I did for um, the famous Prospector. Very, very sensitive, but you can adjust it so you can utilize that small target sensitivity, or you can do things another way and not get that sensitivity if you're working in an area that is subject to a lot of shotgun pellets, bird shot. You can start using larger coils. You can adjust the frequency on this to a lower frequency or lower, or we'll call it a greater off time between receive and transmit, which allows those tiny targets to decay away so the detector will not pick them up. It's a massive advantage when you can do that. I've been out in the field and you know, it's just full of lead shot, and by being able to utilize a bigger coil, which I put on an 18-inch mono, I turn the frequency down, but I can still run fairly substantial gain, and I can detect. I'm not going to get gold the same size as what the shotgun pellets are, but bigger pieces, which I'm really after. I'm not after the time wasting tiny bits of gold. You need 150 of them to make 1.5 grams or something. I'm not interested. But even though the detectors will do it, some people are interested. You know, years and years ago, back in would have been 1990s, I was on a patch there where I got absolutely hundreds and hundreds of small gold, tiny gold, using very, very high frequency VLF detectors. And, you know, it was good. But I suppose, you look at the gold price now. What's gold? Gold in Australian dollars, Australian pesos, for a better word, about 3,000 Australian dollars per ounce of gold. In that scenario, maybe it's worthwhile picking up all these, you know, point ones or less size gold, and they, add up to a few dollars pretty quickly. But there is a lot of turn this round. I'll drop it back down. Yeah, windy. There we go. Yeah, there is a probably a good reason to go after it, but I'm after, like I always say, I'm after the bigger, deeper stuff. See, the trouble with our gold fields is that since about 1978, and we had the massive gold rush from about 1979, 1980, when everyone was running around with VLF detectors, the old A2B Garretts, and we had some of the White's 5000s, and we had this and that. And I had my old trusty 840D Bounty Hunter. Yeah, all that surface gold. It was there's thousands of people out there, thousands and thousands of people. I remember going to, areas like Denali, and you'd look around, and you would see 100 people, through the trees, and that went on for quite a while. So you'd start thinking that a lot of the easy surface gold has been grabbed. Now, those initial rushes, everyone was using VLFs, and on the ironstone ground we have here in Australia, they were lucky to be getting 2 or 3 inches through the ground. Unless it was a huge target, it's obvious that on a huge target you're going to get a lot more depth. But the VLFs had hardly any penetration. So for many, many years, when you had the hordes out there, all these people over the goldfields here, there, and everywhere, they were getting a lot of small gold at surface. But then they've all given up and think the gold fields are worked out. And then in I think around about mid 1990s, the SD2000 came out, the Minelab SD2000, and that opened up the gold fields again. For bigger, deeper gold, which it was specifically designed for. It wasn't very good on small gold. Still could do it, but it's not going to get your 0.1s and that. It wouldn't do it. So you've had these detectors come through, and that's when we had some very, very big gold finds, big nuggets, big specimens turn up over the years. And you haven't had as many people out there, but you've had still quite a few. And as time's gone on, the mentality of the old prospectors is sort of along the lines of, well, it's been gone over. We don't need to do it again. We don't need to go there. And they always look for different areas. A lot of Victorians here, they all go over to Western Australia. Obviously, the whole of Western Australia is just basically a big gold field. And you never, I'd say in 1,000 lifetimes, you're never, ever going to get all the gold there. It's just impossible. You look at some of the YouTube channels, people are out there, they just get gold every day. Some days they don't, but they usually, when they're on an area, they get onto a patch, it just hasn't been touched, and they get quite a few nuggets. And when you look at all this, and the gold's still there, there's deeper gold, so we need another layer of technology to get down, and it's not necessarily getting down to crazy depths. There's a lot of intermediate gold that previous technology just wasn't able to process and get a clear signal on it. So a lot of people who were not very experienced prospectors, I'm saying, ones that don't do it every weekend or have been doing it for a couple of years, they would mistake ground signals for actually big targets. And after a while, you dig a few of these ground signals up, and you basically say, no, I'm going to ignore those. And worst thing you could ever do, because sometimes very hard to differentiate between a ground noise and a large target at depth. So with these detectors, when these are upgraded, they are far more sensitive, far more sensitive. And with that extra sensitivity, it does translate into extra depth capability, clarity of signal capability, small gold capability at extra depth as well. And you can look at some small gold, and you could say, you'll start looking at 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5 grammars, or just as an example, and if there's a lot of noise in the ground, and you're just not the detector's just not processing the signal properly, you're not going to hear them. So we can do technology changes to get a better resolution on that sort of gold. So, dear me, frog in the throat again. Ah, dear me, that would have been loud on the microphone. So, I'm just saying that with newer technology, even the older technology brought up in specification to very similar to the newer technology or newer device detectors. We've done early tests, and in my old videos, we've done tests against we've side by side tests with GPZ7000s and SDC2300s, and in both cases, we can exceed the performance of those detectors by modifying these old ones. And I always say I bought these detectors. I actually purchased the Z or Z, if you want to call it a GPZ, uh, 7000, and utilizing standard mono coils, I was getting far greater depth on these detectors, on these GPX type detectors, than what we could get out of that technology. I mean, obviously the GP Z or GPZ, depending where in the world you're from, has advantages in some circumstances, but not all circumstances. And for central Victorian goldfields, from my own testing, I was getting better results utilizing the older technology of the older detectors, but just with some add-on of some new technology. So these detectors, people think, oh, people, hang on, I've got to quantify this. Prospectors think, and I'll say some prospectors, but it's probably all prospectors, right? Okay, this is what happens, right? You got a detector, you're out there. Gold's hard to find in a lot of circumstances, so gold's hard to find, and company, X, Y, or Z will come out with, oh, new detector, right? And the mentality of prospectors is instantaneous. Oh, that detector has to be better. I'm going to buy that detector, and they get rid of their old detector and they go and buy the new one. And you see this happen time and time again. And give it a couple of months, and they go, my God, it's not much better than what I had, or they don't like it. There's a lot of prospectors out there who went and bought the GP ZZ 7000, and the main complaint was it's too heavy, and they didn't like that. It's just too tiring to use. If you're not built like the Hulk, it's a very draining detector to use for a long period of time. I found that too. I could swing a GPX or any of the other detectors, no matter what it was. Even I wouldn't care what it was. Swing it all day, not a problem. Not that 7000. I couldn't do it. Started getting very sore shoulder, and it was very fatiguing. But that's in my own personal opinion. I always say that, don't I? That's my opinion. So, these detectors here, that is light as a feather. Pick it up, 2 fingers, not an issue. And if you balance it properly, and you don't just use a massive, huge weighted coil, you can go all day on these GPX or GPs, or even the SDs. SDs are a good detector as well, done right. We've done some of those lately as well. So we're getting a few detectors in to upgrade, and someone has requested a hamburger with a lot, and it's going to take a little while to build that up. I've got to build up 5 boards for that. So and these boards all have to be matched to within 0.1%. So it's a lot of testing. It's being very selective on the components. Test. Very high accuracy, and makes for a damn good detector, though. My God, it makes it for a good detector. So I actually want to get this 4500, the no ears one. I want to get that out in the field and give that a good go. I might take that over to Talbot and go over some work around there and see what happens. Usually I go over the work around and I pull more gold. So, and a lot of the customers I've got are pulling more gold. But the main thing too, when you do these detectors, it's the nature of the people you're doing the work for. They want to have the edge. They want to be the first. They want to be out there and go over the ground, and they keep it to themselves. They don't tell people they're using upgraded detectors or anything like that. I've seen them. They put covers over the detectors, and they have a cover over on the control, so you won't see that. It'll have a flap over it and stuff like this. Sorry for giving away the secrets, guys, but I'm just saying it as it is. And it's probably one of the reasons you don't hear a lot about it. It really is quite secretive. Um, especially the guys who do it more professionally. We do a lot of detectors for professional prospectors, and it's very, very hush hush. I have, you know, I say to them, look, how much gold are you getting? What I need the feedback. I need to know the improvement, and it is reported back by some of them, but it's under threat of death that you don't tell anyone where the gold comes from, where I am, where I'm going. Um, and I've had them send pictures of the gold they have found, and some of it's staggering. It really is. I have one fellow in particular sent me a DVD with just photographs on it of all the gold. I was just like, my God, um, he's full time, but yeah, huge amount of gold, huge. And just recently, there's a fellow who found what was it? It was in the news here. It was only found in the last couple of days. Maybe, oh no, within 5 days ago, and it was a 2.6 kilogram gold. Well, it's not a nugget. They say it's a nugget. It's a big specimen. It's about the size of a what would it be the size of? I'm trying to think something what it would be. Um, like a football you use for the Americans, gridiron or something like that. Um, it's that size, like a, in Australian football, a smaller version of a football, like a kid's football, maybe a little bit bigger, but 2.6 kilograms of gold in it. And they estimate, well, the fellow who had it turn up at his shop down in Geelong estimated or worked it out and XRF'd it or something. I don't know exactly what they did, but it's worth, had $240,000 of gold in it, just one piece. And the thing that was interesting, and I won't say where it come from, they said it's between Ballarat, Bendigo, and St Arden, which is basically the whole golden triangle of thousands of square miles or kilometres. So it could be anywhere. But we did have a look at the gold. It looks like it's a couple of guys I know looked at it, and we come to the conclusion that it's very old quartz. It's in quartz flow when this stuff was formed. This is very old. This thing was millions of years old. It was very crumbly quartz, but you could tell it was water worn as well. So it's obviously been in a river system at some time, and it broke in half. I think that was the story. And if you look at the quartz, it's very, very brittle and friable, which means it's very old, and it's probably just been sitting on top somewhere and it's been oxidized and weathered. And I'm looking at the quartz on that, and I've seen quartz exactly the same as that before. Uh, and it comes from around Moonambell, Barkly area, and it's very, very old quartz, probably been come from one of the faults there millions of years ago. It's been forced to the surface in a reef system. The reef's decayed, and that's stayed together. Basically, it was knitted together with all the gold through it, and didn't break down. But you could see that it's definitely been sitting in water for a fair amount of time. And I would say that the water it was sitting on had a very wasn't neutral pH. It was either acidic or towards being a bit of a base, because you could tell the way the quartz was affected on the outside. So, you know, even all this information, just looking at, if you've been in the game a long time, you know, and you know the area, you know where stuff comes from. So I'm looking at that. I'm saying it's definitely Western Victoria. It could even be, even they didn't say it, but they give it. They say in the Golden Triangle, but it could have came. There's also gold between Ballarat and Ararat, which is far west. Is actually quartz around Ararat that looks exactly the same. So I think a lot of people will never ever give away their gold spots, and they may throw off by a huge margin. So people just don't look in that particular area, just in case there's more there. But I would be looking at that and thinking very seriously that it would be Western Victoria, leaning in that direction. I could be wrong, but I have a gut feeling I'm right. But anyway, but that's not bad, not a bad find. $240,000 for a ball of quartz and gold. Now, these things over years, these big pieces of gold, they do not normally sit at surface because of the sheer weight of the gold and the surrounding dirt, minerals, whatever it's sitting in. Unless it's sitting on bedrock or very close to bedrock, it will stay there. It's even on the clay layers too. Densely packed clay layers. The bigger gold can sit on top of it. But when you get really big gold, if you got to look back to the Hand of Faith that was found many years ago. What was it? That was a hell of a big chunk of gold. It was 800 and something ounces. The old miners had stripped the ground to a layer of clay, and the gold was sitting on top of the clay. And the big Hand of Faith nugget sunk into the clay, and it sunk down below where the old, the 1850, 60, old timers were, taking all the material from top of the clay layer. This great whopping heap of gold sunk down through the clay, and there's probably a lot of cases of that, of the gold sinking down, and who knows how deep it is. That's why big coils and super sensitive detectors, right? You're running the right mix, basically the type of long pulses you want to energize a big deep target, and enough off time in the detector so you get a lot of reactive ground decay. And when the receiver comes on, you totally energize these big targets as much as you can, and you can hear them. They not normally detectable, but they're there. The amount of big gold sitting around, down 4 feet or 1.2, 1.3 meters, would be unbelievably. It's there. I know it's there because I know people that have found this stuff. Running around big coils. That years ago, some of the most successful prospectors were using 30 and 36-inch coils, big monos, homemade, big, huge monos, and tricked up detectors. Even the old SD2000, 2100s, 2200s, found a lot of big, deep gold. And there was only a few dedicated prospectors doing this. So the ground hasn't really been gone over. It hasn't been, raped and pillaged at depth. It just hasn't happened. We've never had a massive gold rush of hordes of people out there using low frequency techniques and upgraded super sensitive detectors and 30-inch coils. It just hasn't happened. Everyone's just gone around and cleaned up the top surface layer for everybody else who wants to get serious and start looking for the big stuff. So that's my take on it. Looking at it from, I started prospecting in 1980 when I was 19 years old, and done a lot of prospecting, been all over the place, used a lot of detectors, upgraded a lot of detectors, found a lot of gold. Yeah, found a lot of gold. I just trying to think back how much gold that I would have found. I mean, I sold it all, should have kept it. It's gone up in value quite substantially. But, you know, I would have done well over $250,000 of gold over the years. And if I got off the workbench and went out prospecting, I'd probably find a lot more. But at the moment, I've just got people requesting detectors getting done. It's been happening for years and years and years. So it's like it is. It's a full-time business doing detectors, but we do them for people all over the world. So there's a lot of detectorists out there. Anyway, oh God, I've waffled on for 36 minutes. I better cut this short and get on with this other detector. Anyway, catches.